Welcome to the Higher Ed Athletics Podcast. Today, I'm joined by two leaders from Grambling State University. We have President Rick Gallot and Trayvean Scott, Dr. Trayvean Scott, Athletic Director at Grambling State. Gentlemen, thanks for being on the podcast.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Well, I want to start. This one can be either of you. A lot of this is for my dissertation, and I think a lot of people aren't really as aware of the whole institution. So maybe, Prez, this might be better for you, but for those not familiar with Grambling State University, can you maybe profile both the institution, and then Dr. Scott, you could do the athletic department profile as well. But I'm looking for things like institution size, the type, the location, and then we get into the athletic details of the conference, number of sports and athletes, things like that.
Sure. So, and again, thank you so much for allowing us to participate with you today. Grambling State University was founded November 1st, 1901, here in the piney hills of north central Louisiana. Of course, in 1901, the educational opportunities for African Americans was very limited. And so a group of Black farmers here in this area wrote to Booker T. Washington at Tuskegee Institute at the time, asking him to send them someone to start a school. And Charles Phillip Adams was the one that he sent here to start the school. And so again, we will celebrate 120 years on November 1st. So we're certainly very grateful for longevity, especially when you consider the many challenges that existed for an African-American school in rural north central Louisiana, not just in 1901, but during many periods in between. We are currently approximately 5,400 students. Over the last 5 years, we've seen about a 20% increase in the number of students that we have here at the university. Our students represent approximately 40 states and over 20 foreign countries. Some of the programs that we're most noted for, our computer science department, we graduate more African Americans in computer science and computer information systems than any other school in the state of Louisiana, as well as our cybersecurity, cloud computing programs, and our soon to be completed first and only digital library here on the campus of Grambling State University. Our motto is where everybody is somebody.
Nice. Let's talk about the athletic department as well. Trey.
So I too would like to thank you for having us this afternoon. I often make jokes about, following behind President Gallot because he does it so eloquently. But Grambling State University is indeed a special place, a place where everybody is somebody. I am blessed, honored, and elated to be appointed the inaugural vice president of Intercollegiate Athletics on July 1st. And so in assuming that role, obviously we assume, many of the traditions that come along with an institution like Grambling State University, all of the legends, starting with Coach Eddie Robinson and the 50 plus years that he roamed the sidelines in the Piney Woods on the campus of Grambling State University. All the way to, of course, Doug Williams being the first African-American quarterback to win a Super Bowl, Shaq Harris, the first African-American quarterback to start an NFL football game. And so our student athletes are literally standing on the shoulders of that history and that tradition. And so with that, again, extremely excited to lead this program. We have 15 sports, nine women, 6 men. All of our sports, of course, led by football. Are at a crossroads as it relates to obviously their culture and where we look for those programs moving forward. We've got bright goals in terms of what we want to do in terms of facilities, in terms of sports sponsorship. We're looking at increasing our presence in tennis with the addition of our men's tennis in the fall of 2023. As well as our men's and women's golf team. We're looking to bring that about on the fall of 2023 as well, just to ensure that, of course, we meet the maximum sports sponsorship as allowed as a member, one of the 12 members of the Southwestern Athletics Conference. From there, again, and President said, he made a reference to First and Only as it related to the digital library, but we're looking now from that point to look at other offerings whereby, Black and brown students could go about, being able to participate athletically within the confines of sports that aren't traditionally offered in the HBCU setting, namely women's gymnastics, wrestling, and swimming. And so, we've got a very bold, very innovative agenda that we're looking forward to undertaking. We've got a very bold strategic vision that we're in the process of laying out for the 2022 to 2027 5-year cycle. And it's just a great time to be a Grambling State University Tiger, not just from the standpoint of an athletics director, obviously with President Gallot's transformative leadership. It's easy to get on board, right? But you feel that energy when you come on campus, not just from an administrative standpoint, but also to that of the student athletes, our faculty, and our staff.
That's a great profile from both sides of the institution. One of the better ones I've had on here when I ask that question. It's not often I get to have the president and the athletic director / vice president on here. Prez, let's go to what were you looking for? Kind of keeping the focus on this recent hire, Dr. Scott just coming into the fold. What were you looking for in that candidate to fill the AD vacancy, to align the vision of athletics with what your vision is for your institution? And how did that description and process ultimately lead you to Trey Scott? You are muted. I'll edit that out. Don't worry.
Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, so the first thing is, as Dr. Scott alluded to, he is the inaugural vice president of intercollegiate athletics. We felt that at this point in time, it was important to not only elevate the title, but also to elevate the caliber of individual who would lead our intercollegiate athletic programs. Grambling is very well known, and I don't say that to brag, but and certainly as we stand on the shoulders of Eddie Robinson, of Willis Reed, an NBA Hall of Famer who is named one of the 50 greatest players in NBA history, Ralph Garr, who went on to play Major League Baseball. All of the things that our athletic department has done to essentially put Grambling on the map. I don't think we've ever fully we've never really fully monetized and taken advantage of the true value of the Grambling brand. And so what we were looking for, who we were looking for, was embodied in Dr. Trayvean Scott. I mean, he was clearly head and shoulders above other candidates who applied for the position. There were individuals who were from Power 5 schools. There were sitting ADs. There were sitting associate ADs. I don't think any of them had a 300 plus page strategic plan that clearly delineated that he gave thought to what this role might look like and how he might put those plans and that vision on paper. It's easy to talk about what you want to do, but when you actually take the time to reduce it to writing, I think that shows a level of commitment that we don't often see in interviewing candidates for a host of different positions. So Dr. Scott has the energy, he has the intellect, he has the experience, he has the spirit of a leader and someone who understands the value of that Grambling brand. And he understands also that the expectations are high, that we will finally, again, I've mentioned we're about to celebrate our 120th anniversary. We will in 2026 celebrate 100 years of athletics at Grambling, as well as 100 years of our marching band. We will, during this era, finally realize the true value of our brand and monetize that value that will benefit student athletes, students at Grambling State University in ways that we should have been doing decades ago, but we will certainly not miss the opportunity to monetize that brand in this era of leadership.
I'll have to ask Trayvean about that 300-page thing in a second. It wasn't on the list of questions, but that opened the door. President, I do want to follow up with that. Did which we'll get to his grant writing experience and also having his PhD, and he's very well educated traditionally with 2 bachelor's degrees and a master's degree and then a PhD. I'm curious, starting to see a trend in more people leading athletic departments as that VP role that also have a doctorate degree. How much, if at all, did that PhD and that background, knowing what he probably went through to get that, and help with that decision of you taking it from just an athletic director position to actually, a vice president role at your institution?
Well, I think first and foremost, it represents or it's the manifestation of a commitment to setting a goal and achieving it. And so the fact that it's not a required degree, however, he was led to pursue and complete the task, I think is what's most important. The other thing is, the business of athletics and so often, our fans don't necessarily appreciate athletics as a business. It's a sport. It's something that they like to watch and don't like to lose. But there is a business component to athletics that sometimes I think is lost on fans at times. Dr. Scott fully understands and appreciates the value and the business of athletics. He possesses the business acumen that is necessary again for a school like Grambling to reach its full potential. I'll just mention that when Ralph Waldo Emerson Jones, Grambling's second president, hired Eddie Robinson in 1941, his charge to Coach Robinson was, and Coach was only 27 years old, I believe, at the time, make Grambling the Black Notre Dame of college football. And so I would say in many respects, Coach Robinson absolutely achieved the goal that was set for him, and that was to put us on the map. However, have we achieved the financial success that would represent a brand that is as widely known as Grambling as compared to a Notre Dame? And I would say we still have miles to go. So we needed someone who, again, not just understood the compliance and, student athletes being eligible to compete and, and those kinds of things. He understands how to turn a profit. And I said when I was being interviewed for this job over 5 years ago, that if there is another school in Louisiana, and we know LSU is the only one currently that truly turns a profit in athletics. I said, if there is another school in Louisiana that can turn a profit, it's Grambling. He gets it, he understands it, and knows the way forward. That's going to get us there. So that's why he is the inaugural vice president of intercollegiate athletics at Grambling State University, the place where everybody is somebody.
I appreciate that. And, Trey, I had muted you, so you can unmute. I can't unmute you, but I want to kind of go to you.
Sure.
Kind of going off my question with the asking President Gallot about your PhD. I'm in a doctoral program, so that's a big that's the main reason I started the podcast, was kind of an outside the learning experience. But as an athletic administrator, you've been in this business for a while. You had 2 bachelor's degrees, a master's degree. I'm curious what led you to actually pursue that PhD, and was it to ultimately be an AD, or what was kind of the reasoning there? And then what did you learn from that program that you think helps now leading in that VP role at Grambling State?
Well, I think first and foremost, and I'll go back to my days as an undergraduate, as a student athlete, and, you know, really wanting to do something different and special and really make sure that I could leverage the free education that I was blessed to receive as a men's basketball student athlete. And so, you know, that kind of manifested itself, you know, into almost a rhythm that just in a level of focus that just allowed me to really just do it. Right. You know, I turned in a few decent semesters, you know, obviously with the transition, with being a student athlete. And then, you know, much like, you know, we discuss with our student athletes now, I hit that aha moment and really started to understand and appreciate the opportunity that I had as a student athlete, and really just wanted to take full advantage of it. And so, you know, that turned into, you know, 12, 14 hours turned into 18, 19 hours, and just really a self-challenge. And that enabled me to receive my first degree in 2.5 years in business marketing with a sales concentration, with 2 years of eligibility remaining. And so knowing full well that I wanted to continue my playing career, and having the opportunity to continue to receive more education, like my mom and my grandparents would say, more free education, was just something that I quite frankly couldn't turn down. And so that gave me an opportunity to try to take it a step further, to always continue to push the envelope. And so, you know, that kind of mirrored itself once I completed my bachelor's degree in marketing. There was a 21-hour difference in a management degree. And so, you know, that was really out there for me. And then there was the master's degree in communications, and really trying to add tools, if you will, to the writing aspect and the PR aspect and understanding of news cycles and being able to place information in specific areas. That was of a great interest to me. Once that happened and I really started to mature and grow into athletic administration, I started to fall in love with the educational aspect of it. Prez and I are both aligned 1,000% with monetizing the brand. And I told the staff yesterday in our all-staff meeting that brand is heavy, that brand is significant. But there's an educational aspect to this thing with our student athletes that I quite frankly wanted to develop a full understanding of. And so that led me to pursue my doctorate in education with the concentration in sport administration. And that also allowed me to really understand, you know, the academic aspect of the field, you know, in policy, and then be able to carry it over from a practical standpoint as an athletic administrator. And so that is kind of what led to that. But I find myself now, and I've taught classes for some time, I find myself now really having an understanding of the higher education experience across the board through my opportunities to be able to pursue and receive a doctorate degree and be able to have a presence in the classroom. And so that gives us an additional level of understanding when we sit in cabinet meetings with the provost, when we engage with our student affairs practitioners, when we try to understand the perspective of President Gallot and his COO and his chief of staff and his senior leadership team. That allows us an advantage, if you will, to have that understanding holistically of higher education in that landscape and how we can bring it to our department to leverage that 40-year commitment for our student athletes, and then to be able to prepare our staff and our coaches to be able to pour into these student athletes for the betterment of that 40-year commitment.
Well, we'll keep it right here with you. Another question, then I got another one for President Gallo.
Sure.
After serving as the deputy AD and senior level administration for a decade at Southern, was there anything about stepping into the AD chair that in this new position, this new institution, that caught you off guard, or that maybe you were surprised by, of going from being the probably the COO and running the day to day, but then making the decisions and the strategic decisions involved? Do you feel like anything caught you off guard, or was it pretty much what you thought it might be the challenge? I mean, you did a 300-page strategy, so I'm sure you found out. But was there anything that caught you off guard?
In terms of the work, no. In terms of the expectations that the president has for us, not at all. I think the biggest adjustment for me was, it's a little different when you come from the rival institution. It's a little different, when these schools are pretty much really first cousins. I mean, we're rivals, but we're more like family. You've got many husbands, wives, sisters, brothers, first cousins, that are representatives of either of these institutions. And so there's a lot of interaction. There's a lot of communication between institutions. And so coming over, I fully understood the charge as it related to the work and the culture and what was expected. But the biggest adjustment for me was just the day-to-day, the way of doing business, trying to understand some of the personnel and trying to realize and retrofit a culture and a strategy around and to be inclusive in those efforts. And so really not much different from the work. I'm starting to really gain some traction. President Gallot has a open door policy as it relates to being able to call and ask questions and even vent sometimes. And so, being able to, again, be appointed the inaugural vice president for athletics at such a storied institution, you take that seriously. You move, in a way to be able to develop a culture that can achieve those goals of monetizing that brand and educating our student athletes, providing those opportunities. But at the beginning, probably, I'm 64, 65 days in now, probably within, and president's on the call, so I'm going to try to be as transparent as possible. Probably within the last 7 to 10 days, I'm starting to really gain some traction, starting to really push forward a little harder, starting to really just, try to take a hold of this thing and spin it in a way that's representative of what Grambling State athletics should be.
President Gallo, I think it's probably interesting for you too, because you're also a Southern. I think you went to law school or something at Southern, right? So you got that Grambling and that Southern degree. But I kind of want to go to 5 years ago. You wrote a piece in the Advocate, which is a newspaper based in Baton Rouge, about relationships you would bring to the presidency when you took the presidency in 2016. You were a state representative and a state senator for about 15 years, I think. And considering the challenges both higher education and now college athletics, are continuing to face, what advantage has or will that political experience and those relationships bring to Grambling as you try to build that brand?
Yeah, so I mean, in anything, any successful organization, it's not insulated. It's one that grows stronger by strategic partnerships and relationships. And so, certainly as a state institution, it's important to have maintain a good relationship with our elected officials, with our regulatory boards, of course, in our case, the University of Louisiana system. It's helpful, quite frankly, to be able to connect directly with the governor. I don't abuse my friendship with him, but certainly it doesn't hurt. It certainly doesn't hurt to have a relationship with, former representative, former congressman who's now senior advisor to the United States president. Those relationships, sometimes will open doors that may have been a little more difficult to walk through. And I certainly can't claim original thought when it comes to this. I think, our second president, and I've referred to him earlier, R.W. Jones, everybody affectionately called him Prez. Okay, so I'm actually, and Coach Fobbs calls me Prez 2.0. So I'm the second iteration of Prez. He was the master politician. He was quite often known to travel to Baton Rouge with a truckload of peaches. And of course, this was back when there was an active farm here on the campus and a very robust peach orchard. So, he knew how to make friends down at the Capitol. And having some of these sweet Grambling peaches certainly didn't hurt. We also had a turkey farm here, and he was known to bring turkeys to the local political leaders in this area around Thanksgiving time. So relationships are important in any business. And I have to say that, during my time in the legislature, I worked on behalf of and advocated on behalf of Southern University just as hard as I did for Grambling, because our HBCUs are important. And a strong Grambling yields a strong Southern, and vice versa. And now that we look at our HBCU Advisory Council, where not only our public HBCUs, Grambling, Southern, SUNO, the Southern University Law Center, but also our privates, Xavier University and Dillard University, all coming together to work together for common interest of our HBCUs and the students that we serve. So I'll always be an advocate for for reaching out and making sure to put the time in for those relationships. They matter.
I can imagine. Keeping with relationships, kind of with the presidential perspective, and Trayvean, you can chime in on this too, definitely as the VP of Athletics. But I've asked a couple of presidents and chancellors this before. If it weren't for college athletics and the structure that comes with that between NCAA and conference affiliations, do you think college presidents generally would speak that often? Because I learned in my one of my higher ed classes how competitive it is. These institutions that are trying to do different things. Because I imagine the conversations start with athletics, but it probably helps you build your working relationships, because I'm sure you talk about other things in higher ed too. And maybe COVID was an example of that, where you lean a little more on fellow presidential colleagues. But do you think that structure has helped kind of pave the way for stronger relationships outside of athletics too?
Well, and Dr. Scott has said it much more eloquently than I can in quoting, was it Dean Smith, Dr. Scott?
That's him.
And so give us the whole saying.
So the quote is, athletics is to a university what a front porch is to a home. It's the most visible, yet it's not the most important.
That is a good extension on that often used porch conversation. So I used to tell people it's more like a window, but I like that. I'm not to steal that.
Yeah,
I'll give the appreciated quote, but that's a good one.
Yeah. So again, when you think about Grambling is poised to celebrate 120 years as an institution, but we're still 5 years away from 100 years as in terms of athletics. The university was here before we founded the band that we're very well known for. Our Tiger Marching Band, world fame, has performed in the first Super Bowl. It's performed in more Super Bowls than any other artist, band, or group. But still, those band members are students first. So we've got plenty to talk about when it comes to the academic side of the house, as we again talk about the digital library and cybersecurity and cloud computing and computer science and criminal justice. All of those areas that we're very well known for. So look, especially when you're winning, it's great to be able to talk about athletics. We came in 2016 and we were HBCU national champions. Yeah, there are a lot of great conversations you can have when you're wearing the big old championship ring on your hand. But at the same time, that is still secondary to the importance of having a graduation rate, not only for our student athletes, but all students, that represents a commitment to academics, which is why students come here or should come here in the first place.
Dr. Scott, that's a good segue to a question I was going to ask you. Here at IU, I'm in charge of APR and grad rates and progress towards degree, stuff that you're very familiar with. At Southern, you helped bring the number of teams hitting their APR benchmark from just 3 teams to 15 teams. There's an ongoing court battle that just took another step to, I think the NCAA is trying to close it, but it's staying open about HBCU institutions and basically how the APR is overwhelmingly punishing the HBCUs with postseason ban. APR is being reviewed right now. A lot of people making the case that we don't need it anymore, or it's not as accurate. But how do we adjust the APR to not punish the HBCUs because of the mission of some of the HBCU institutions? Because I made the case that now that there's money tied towards the single year, the department wide, why do you need a postseason ban? You already have a punishment. You really want to ban, like, so much roster turnover with transfers? Are you really banning the right people for an APR score? So from your opinion as an academic and an administrator, how do we adjust the APR, or do we actually just get rid of it, or do we keep it as is?
So my thought there is that, and I want to unpack that question. First of all, having been able to experience probably the lowest of the lows of APR, hell, if you will, and trying to develop strategies to improve the processes related to APR, how to effectively educate your coaches, how to, to adequately request from a presidential or vice presidential standpoint the resources needed to provide the basics, and then how to hold your student athletes accountable in order to develop a process whereby you basically could have an effective APR process. So in that vein, APR doesn't bother me from that standpoint because we've seen it, we've diagnosed it, we've provided the requisite education to our students, our staff, our president, and in the case of Southern University and the Southern University system, it's board of supervisors, right? But we also had to undergo an extreme amount of embarrassment, right? Much of it our own doing. And so from that aspect, I fully understand the charge of APR and the Committee on Academics as it relates to APR, as it relates to retention, eligibility, graduation, retention points. Well, now we've got this new aspect of name, image, and likeness and the transfer portal. And so I think now that we're adding those different elements to the puzzle, then there needs to be some conversation from a low resource standpoint to how we address those things. Because what's going to happen at the HBCU level is we're going to become, if we're not careful, feeder programs. And so we're going to have, mid-major, group of five, and even power five institutions in some instances being able to come and really poach our talent. Well, when they poach our talent, then, we're losing retention points if GPAs aren't at certain levels. If you're losing retention points, now you put yourself in a space to where obviously you could conceivably be postseason banned, but now there's a revenue distribution component built into that as well. And so I think some consideration needs to be given to that. I think in the old APR model, there was a 2-6 and a 3-3 component, but there was also a leaving eligible and signing with an agent component. That was something that obviously benefited, the power fives, the one and dones and things of that nature. So surely if we could, be able to provide those variables and those things that could assist those schools that are losing a lot of those one and done talents, then we should be able to build something or be able to provide a think tank or a group of presidents. I think my president is quite possibly the finest HBCU president, but probably one of the better presidents in America. And I'm not just saying this because he's on the call, because of the way he thinks, because of how bold, how innovative he is, and the strategy that he puts forth in order to achieve whatever it is that we seek to achieve as an institution. And so with that, I think that we should be able to put together a group, a panel, a think tank, a focus group to be able, in conjunction with the NCAA's Committee on Academics and even the Committee on Infractions, to be able to understand where we are from the standpoint of achieving our missions as historically Black colleges and universities and 1880 land-grant institutions. And so with that, there's some work to be done. There's also a responsibility for us to know and understand what APR is in its current state and be able to build policies, procedures, practices, and deploy the resources to make sure that our institutions aren't receiving postseason ban after postseason ban. Because what happens with that is now you start to get that negative attention, and now that brand imagery that monetization of the brand that President Gallot spoke of earlier now is compromised, right? And so, all of these things are kind of in lockstep with one another. And we've got an opportunity on our end at Grambling State University to grab the bull by the horns in all aspects of athletics, and academics is no different.
President Gallot, I want to kind of talk about, I've been talking about system institutions. And so Grambling is a member of the University of Louisiana system with 8 other D1 schools, including New Orleans, McNeese State, Nicholls State, Northwestern State, Southeastern Louisiana State, Louisiana Tech, UL Lafayette, and UL Monroe. If I got any of those wrong, you can correct me. But I'm interested in systems. I work at IU system. I'm an IUPUI alum. I do stuff. This podcast is under the IUPUI umbrella, so I focus on systems. Now that's a university one, not necessarily a statewide one with different institutions. But do you think that with all the changes coming to college athletics, there's a bigger role to be played for individual system institutions and their athletic departments to work together? You talked about the HBCU kind of some different schools aligning to have a council type thing. But is there something that with these athletic departments that you could envision, whether it's at the president role or athletic department role, that you can have these conversations about anything happening in college athletics that could help one another with whether it's resources or just decisions on votes?
So, I think one of the many things I appreciate about being a member of the University of Louisiana system is that, number one, we are the only HBCU. So there are certain benefits to being the only HBCU in our system. The other thing that I'll point out, unlike many others, and I know Dr. Scott alluded to it earlier about Southern University, being the only HBCU system in the country. Many of our HBCU peers have their own boards, management boards that they answer to, which has advantages and disadvantages. But I would definitely see diversity within the UL system as a strength for us. It has also provided us an opportunity to have member schools that are in different conferences. There are member schools that are in the Southland Conference. Let's see, Louisiana Tech is in the Conference USA. So there are things that aren't they in Conference USA, Dr. Scott? Did I get that right?
You got it right, Prez.
Okay, yeah, they were in the WAC at one point and then went to Conference USA.
Dr. Wood, formerly on the podcast before he started leading the institution.
Great. Eric's a great guy too. Certainly have enjoyed getting to know him and seeing him around, and definitely know that athletics at Tech is in great hands. And we talked before we went on about Tim Duncan, who, as I mentioned, is my fraternity brother. There at
Here we go.
Oh yeah, you walked right into that.
Right. So. Fellow member of the greatest Kappa Alpha Psi fraternity, just having the opportunity to interact with system schools and system school administrators who are part of different conferences really gives you an opportunity to have a much broader view of athletics and of other topics as well, without being limited by you all being a member of the same conference. And so I really view our role and our our system as being one of diversity, where diversity is definitely a strength that I'm very grateful for.
Yeah, now looking at it, I'm almost like should have the UL system as a formal sponsor of the podcast. I've interviewed half the people in the leading those schools now. Very good system though, and really enjoyed Tim Duncan as well. And then Dr. Wood right before he went to Louisiana Tech. But when it comes to if there is an NCAA vote or institutional input on a governance issue, we have no shortage of issues right now. Is that a group that talking about that diversification that goes to different conferences that you're going to pick up the phone and talk to presidents and Dr. Scott, you with ADs at these other institutions? Because you all have to kind of come with at least it's a good way to diversify your thinking and how it'll affect you differently. Is that accurate?
I believe it is.
Well,
You got it, Press.
Go ahead, Dr. Scott.
I say I believe it is. I think, again, with Dr. Wood, for example, being so close, and Tim and I obviously have a great relationship, but understanding the aspect, from a legislative standpoint, as it relates to regulatory affairs, that, we've got a unique perspective in understanding how the legislation affects all of our institutions. And there's an open line of communication as well, not only from the AD's chair, but from the president's chair as well. And so we've all got great working relationships. I'm a little bit lucky because obviously I know Eric Wood very well. I know Tim Duncan, as Prez would say, his frat brother. I know Prez's frat brother really well. And so, and we talk. We talk often. Tim and I speak probably more often than Eric and I do, but Eric and I are friends and colleagues, and really have a great liking for each other and understand our charges as athletic CEOs, if you will. And so, that diversity of thought, I think, lends itself to us being able, to really bounce ideas and best practices off of each other. Obviously, Tim obviously is in New Orleans and doesn't have football, so that may be different, but there may be some value to, his perspective on things as a non-football institution. Obviously, we've got great value with our branding, our brand identity, our history, and being the only HBCU in the University of Louisiana system. And then Eric, Dr. Wood has the value in terms of being obviously the group of five school, obviously the more, if you will, resourced school, the bowl school, the FBS school. And so from that standpoint, I think there's a lot to offer. And so we all have some value add, to those discussions. I think Prez would probably be the authority on the relationship between those leaders from an executive standpoint, but I don't think it's any different as it relates to, again, that diversity of thought and being able to provide, that thought leadership across the board, and how we could better assist each other as we move forward as athletic directors within the system.
Well, President Gallo, I want to kind of, and Trey can jump in on this too, from his perspective, but I wrote down the question script, this one for Trey, but I think with your political background, understanding the legislation and leading an institution, with all the uncertainty facing college athletics, with the new suggestion that college athletes may be considered employees in the future. Right now, it's just at private schools, but if that happens, does it make it looking ahead and making decisions for your institution's implementation of decisions you make in college athletics, where you want to spend your resources and what you want to do? Does it make it difficult to plan for the future if you don't know whether your student athletes are going to be considered employees one day?
The fact of the matter is, when you think about the challenges that HBCUs have faced throughout our history, even to say why we were founded in the first place, and it was because Black kids had nowhere to go and get an education. So I don't know that the future has ever been certain. When you think about the landscape, I mean, we can talk about the TV revenue that comes into the NCAA, and what percentage of that goes to our schools versus other schools. I mean, I don't know that we've ever had certainty on having a meaningful part in the distribution of revenue. I would argue that we have not. So the fact of the matter is, we're masters, we're experts in navigating uncertain waters. I think it's schools who have always had the silver spoon, who see uncertainty, as something that provides a level of discombobulation, and they don't know how to deal with it because the future has always been clear and has always been bright. I mean, this is where we, quite frankly, function at our best. because we've been here. I mean, this is not new for us. We've always had to play from behind. We've always had to run uphill, both ways. So the uncertainty is familiar, and it's not something that we fear. We run head first into it like we would anything else, and know at the end of the day, with the right game plan, we'll be victorious. Using athletic cliches to make my point.
Appreciate that. Well, President Rick Gallot and Vice President Trayvean Scott, thanks so much for being on the Higher Ed Athletics podcast and really educating me. Selfishly, I invite people on the podcast because I want to learn about their institution and them as individuals. And it's not just, cast a wide net. I seek out schools that I want to learn more about. So thanks for this presidential and vice presidential of athletics combination episodes, the first one I've had. And it was really, really helpful for me and everyone that's going to listen. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Travis. We appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you, Travis, for having us.